What's going on YouTube? RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting, People Helping People, Community as Method. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you guys are all having a great day. Today, we're talking a little bit about the government shutdown and how it's affecting federal defendants. Before we jump into it, we'll give everybody a few minutes to join in. Not that there will be very many people joining in, because this is probably only applying to those of you that are under pretrial services, maybe under federal indictment, getting ready to self-surrender. That's kind of who's probably going to want to watch this video. But we're going to be talking about how it's not just affecting the defendants. We're going to kind of talk why it's affecting the defendants. And we all know that the shutdown is probably going to be lifted today or tomorrow, but these problems may linger a little while into the after effects. For example, even prior to the shutdown, BOP was very understaffed with a shortage of staff ranging from COs to higher level staff members, from case managers, RDAP coordinators, a little bit of everything. There's just been a lot of problems with the BOP in general and the actual sentencing side of going through the process. So we'll kind of talk specifically on how this is going to affect you, or how it could affect you if you're getting ready to maybe self-surrender. Especially around the holidays, everything goes a little bit slower anyway. So let's kind of talk about the process a little bit, and let me go through some of my notes here. So federal sentencing and court operations, the federal courts are still open, but they are operating under like extreme pressures right now. What that means is the case priorities for federal defendants, especially criminal cases, those do take a priority. So a lot of you are still seeing your sentencing scheduled. But where you're seeing the problems is a lot of staff is shorthand to where they're picking up slack for other federal employees that may be on like furlough. So especially when it comes to time to do something like your pre-sentence report, it may take longer to get. You may be having somebody kind of rush through it. So you're definitely going to want to be working with your attorney on this to make sure that it's being done, accurately, that it's not being rushed. The more people that are taking on the extra burden, and a lot of these federal employees are not being paid. That's part of the problem. Specifically when you're talking about like the federal defender's office, a lot of these guys are working without pay, but they're still showing up to court dates, making sure their clients are getting handled. But a lot of them are not taking new cases, which if you've got a private attorney, you may not be seeing that problem as much. But if you're trying to get an appointed attorney, your options may be a lot slimmer than what they would have been, to the point where maybe you're getting an undesirable attorney, or you're waiting in a list or a pool for a federal attorney to be appointed to you. You hear us talking about that pretty often, especially in criminal cases. A lot of guys are like, oh, should I hire an attorney or should I go with an appointed attorney? Most of the time, we would tell our clients, especially, look, if you can afford it and you've got the money that's laying around, and, you're not borrowing, stealing from your parents or your family, or mortgaging your house, then, that's one thing. If you've got the money, then you hire a private attorney all day long. But if you're hiring a private attorney, you probably want to hire a private attorney that specializes in federal cases. The problem is we see a lot of defendants end up they're like, oh, I hired a private attorney and he's got great reviews online. And you go start reviewing the reviews, and the reviews like, oh, he did a great job at my estate sale, or he helped my boyfriend get out of his DUI. You could tell a lot of the stuff that they're working on is either state, or it's like litigation for civil matters. They don't necessarily specialize in federal criminal law, which is a whole different beast. A lot of these guys will take that money and take those cases because the federal courts, anybody that's basically licensed and has passed the bar exam and can show that they basically understand, can probably pick up a federal case. But the problem is they don't always know as much as somebody that only specializes in federal cases. That's why we say, if you can get an appointed attorney from the criminal justice office, take them, because even though you're thinking, oh, this is a court appointed attorney, this is like in the state side, you hear about all the time where people get these public defenders or these public pretenders, and they don't know what they're doing. In the feds, it's way different. You're not getting some guy that's fresh out of school, that's taking on, working at the public defender's office where he's overworked and underpaid. In the federal side, you're probably getting an attorney that's very, very up to speed on how federal law and federal cases work, more so than a private guy that's probably doing a lot of mostly state and dabbles in feds. So you really want somebody that specializes in the system. They have contacts. They knew who to call, because in situations like this, you already probably don't know what you should be focusing on. So if your attorney doesn't really have a grasp, and many times when we're talking to our defendants and we're going through things on getting ready for like a PSR or asking the attorney about things like a 5K1, we've literally had attorneys ask like, oh, what's a 5K1? And, as you know, if you're cooperating to a certain extent, you can qualify potentially to get recommended for a 5K1 where you can get a downward departure and it can help with sentencing. The say all be all snitch card that nobody likes to talk about publicly, but most of everybody that's going to federal prison probably has one. So you really want to make sure that you're able to hold your attorney accountable, and even more so through this whole shutdown process, because if you're dealing with an attorney that might not even be getting paid, you got to wonder, where is his mind at? Not everybody has, tens of thousands of dollars saved away for a rainy day. A lot of people are kind of depending on paycheck to paycheck, and the feds, promising back pay and getting everybody caught up, and in some cases even bonuses for maintaining at work. That's all great, but in the immediate interim of things, being able to pay your bills and thinking, is this the right career for me, kind of takes away from your bandwidth of what you should be working on. If these are some things that you are dealing with and you would like to book a consultation with us to kind of maybe give you some free information, a free 15-minute call on maybe some questions you should be asking your attorney, kind of creating a semi blueprint for you, there is a link in the description of this video. I also just posted it in the live stream. So book a free consultation, can't hurt. Find out some free information there. The designation process, for those of you that are maybe already been sentenced, you can see that process. And also, not only can it go slower, but it can also depend on like what district you're in. For example, we had a guy that was sentenced out of, I believe, the Northern District of Georgia. He just got sentenced about a week and a half ago, and he's already been designated, which was rather quick. Even from what we see, that's rather quick. And that's in midst of the shutdown. So it really depends on who you're dealing with. So you got to remember, once you're sentenced, all of your paperwork is going to be sent off to Grand Prairie, Texas, where designation, processing, computation, all of that's determined. For those of you that, maybe a location was recommended or programs were recommended, like my judge recommended RDAP and my judge recommended a specific prison. Remember, it is not up to the judge. 100% is up to the BOP. So once you're sentenced, all of your paperwork, your J&C, all this information, your pre-sentence report, it all goes off to Texas, Grand Prairie, Texas, where the computation is and designation is determined. So you're waiting to get word on where you're going to go. So usually the BOP will update that, send it to the marshals. The marshals will usually send you and your attorney, maybe your pretrial officer, your probation officer, a letter in the mail. But because of some of these government shutdowns right now, we're seeing that process depending on, again, the district you're in. The busier the district, probably the more employees they still have on staff. But we are seeing some districts who are not even answering their phones right now. So not everybody at sentencing is given a date to surrender. A lot of times at sentencing, the judge will tell you, just wait to receive something from the marshal's office. It will tell you when and where to report. What you don't want to do is you're waiting. And then last minute, you get something on a Friday that tells you need to be there on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it could be in another state. It could be 6 hours away, could be, 600 miles away, 3,000 miles away. You don't always know. So having the logistics kind of scheduled ahead of time, what we do with our clients is after about a week and a half to 2 weeks after being sentenced, we start calling the marshal's office pretty religiously to find out where their designation is and when their surrender date is. Some marshals will even tell you they don't mail out that information anymore. They notify pretrial or your attorney, and then you're relying on that information getting back to you in a timely manner. These are all extra things that can definitely keep you up at night. So working with a consultant, whether it's us or another consultant, or you have an advocate holding your attorney accountable, these are all things that can definitely help alleviate some of the stress that many of you are going through. This whole pretrial phase is an extremely daunting process. Getting indicted, going to court, waiting for your plea deal. At one point you're looking at your options and it's like, oh, I'm facing, 10 to 20 years or up to 100 years in some cases. But we all know once you've gone through this process, you're probably, in the reality of things, for most nonviolent first-time offenders, white collar, blue collar, you're probably looking at somewhere between, a year and a day to 60 months, maybe 72 months at the most, which sounds like a lot when you've never done time before. But the reality, what you were originally looking at on paper versus what you probably end up with on a plea agreement, it's completely night and day. So adjusting your mind and kind of swallowing this process piece by piece helps you get prepared as you get closer. The worst thing is when we have somebody call to book a free consultation and we ask them where they are in their process. Like, I've got sentencing tomorrow, or I'm getting ready to self-surrender. And you can tell that they haven't mentally prepared. They kind of lived in this, like, this temporary la land where they were hoping that some gift from the gods, or, the judge was going to realize that they're a really good person and they didn't deserve to go to prison. The judge is going to realize they have kids and a family at home. And those are not the type of people that typically go to prison. Our friends and our family are kind of telling us, oh man, they're not going to send people like you to jail or prison. So you tend to want to cling on to those types of words because it does sound great. And sometimes in our darkest hours, we need some hope, but being realistic through this process is probably more important than, the clinging on to false hope. The hope that you should be clinging on to is, what mitigating factors are you putting forth right now to position yourself for the best possible outcome? Well, you might think, well, I'm cooperating. I took a good plea deal. I'm a father, I'm a mother, I've got kids at home, I got a sick parent. These are not necessarily the things that are going to get you a shorter sentence. These are typically the things that everybody in your situation is dealing with. Most people that are first-time nonviolent offenders are all really good people that made mistakes. They're all trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, get the shortest sentence possible. And typically the shortest sentence possible is usually just the low end of your guidelines. Most people that just kind of go through the bare minimum, meaning staying out of trouble, doing what their attorney said, they got a decent PSR. They don't have, they're not some career criminal. That reflects into your sentencing guidelines. That reflects into your criminal history, but you don't get cookies. You don't get rewarded for that stuff. The reward is what your guidelines are, the low end of the guidelines. So most of you, when you are some sort of cooperating, whether you're taking acceptance of responsibility or whether you're shooting for a 5K1, usually the best thing that you're going to see from the government is the government recommending the low end of the guidelines. Many of you think, well, I've done so much cooperation with the government. Maybe they'll ask for probation, or maybe they'll ask that I get a supervised release, or maybe they'll ask for a huge reduction in my sentence way below the guideline range. That's usually not very common to see ever from the government, unless you're like telling them where bodies are, or you've got some very unique situation. The majority of you that are going through this process, your best case scenario is getting the low end of the guidelines recommended. So what can you do to mitigate, to help a judge see that maybe you deserve more than that, or put the thought into the judge's mind that you might deserve more than that? Well, that's where you go above and beyond. That's where personal narratives, character reference letters, how you prepare for your pre-sentence report so it doesn't look like everybody else's, how you prepare for your personal narrative so it doesn't look like every other narrative that the judge has seen. And when I say every other narrative, I'm referring to every other narrative of defendants similar to you, white collar situations, first time nonviolent offenders, maybe blue collar, basically somebody that hasn't been through the system over and over and over again. Maybe you've got a blemish, DUI in the past, but for the most part, you've been a, law-abiding citizen paying your taxes, and here you are in a jam. So you're trying to create some contrast between yourself and the rest of the herd. Well, that doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen by mistake. You kind of knowing the process, having somebody who can help you with the process, like a consultant, can really position you to show the judge the things that they're not used to seeing, reading a letter that they're not used to seeing, focusing on accountability, seeing your friends and family holding you accountable, how many letters you're submitting, all of these things. Another big thing that people don't really work on, and these all are relative to the shutdown right now, because many of you, maybe your sentence is 24 months, maybe it's 37 months. These are the thresholds. Like a 24-month sentence is kind of the minimum sentence to get into RDAP. A 24-month sentence would get you about 6 months off of RDAP. A 31-month sentence, so 24 to 30 gets you 6 months off in RDAP. 31 to 36 months can get you 9 months off, and 37 plus can get you up to a year off. So it's not just specifically how much time you're sentenced to, it's how much time you have remaining on your sentence when you enter into the program. So when you're going in during, November, December, the holiday season, things are already slower. Programs are already, because staff is on vacation as well. Now you're dealing with a shutdown. So if you got a 24-month sentence, you're like, all right, I'm going to get into RDAP. I'm going to get my 6 months off for that, get a little FSA, I'm out of there. You might get in and maybe the classes are paused. That's what we're seeing in different locations. Again, depending on where you're going, some of these prisons right now that offer RDAP are kind of on pause because they don't have enough staff to run them, or there's other programs or other things that are more of a priority. Security is always going to be the priority of the prison. So many times the best way they can secure a prison is by putting it on lockdown. And when you go into lockdown, you're not necessarily programming. So if you're in the midst of a program and they don't have enough staff to make sure that the prison is safe, you probably don't see this as much at camps, but when you get to the lows and the mediums, where there's a little bit more of a likelihood to see some level of violence, you've got people serving, 20 years to life at a low, or you got people serving life sentences when you get to a medium. These types of prisons, they have to look at it with a different scope. So they look at what's a priority: First Step Act, Second Chance Act, programming, RDAP. These aren't the priorities. The priority is making sure that staff is safe and other inmates are safe, and that, inmates aren't attacking. These are a lot of the things that they're going to look at that could cause you issues. Now, if you happen to be at a place like, let's say you're at Coleman, they've got a camp, a low, a medium, 2 penitentiaries. If violence were to get too bad at a penitentiary where maybe there was drones coming in, dropping things off, damage to the facility. I remember when I was at Coleman Low, there was a fire at the camp. One of the lawnmowers caught on fire and they shut the whole facility down. So camps and lows are definitely subject to being locked down. Ever since they switched Coleman camp from women, so it used to be a women's camp, now it's a men's camp, and which has introduced it's saved a lot of problems in many areas from where like the sexual harassment was going on with the women inmates from the male COs, but it created new problems where now the male inmates are getting access to cell phones, which are now, kind of leveling up into the low security. So you're seeing the low securities go on shutdown and lock down more. It's affecting visitations. They don't have the staff maybe to handle visitation. So your family's driving or flying, several hours, if not overnight, and flying on an airplane, renting a hotel room just to get there and get turned away at visitation. So if you're getting ready to go into prison between now and January, maybe think of a self-surrender extension. And a self-surrender extension is basically a motion that your attorney can motion with the court, where they would notify the court, they'd notify the government that you're requesting a self-surrender extension of further out date, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days. You do want to try to come up with some valid reasons. Most people do have things that they need to take care of, where it's medical, family, mental health, financial reasons. These are all things that can definitely play a role into helping you get a self-surrender extension. I would say 90% or more of our clients all do a self-surrender extension. And at the end of the day, I get it. Most people just don't want to go to prison. So they're looking for any reason possible to file a self-surrender extension, including myself. When I was getting ready to go, I wasn't ready to go. My original surrender day was supposed to be, I think it was originally in August, and then it automatically defaulted to, I think it was like September 2nd. And then I had a motion put in to change that, and it went to like September 23rd. Most of our clients, we're seeing 30, 60, 90-day self-surrender extensions. Some of our clients, we've done multiple extensions for. The horrible thing is a lot of times your attorney will tell you, oh, nobody ever gets self-surrender extensions, or the judge doesn't like them, or they give you all these reasons as to why they shouldn't do them, which leads me to believe they either don't have experience in filing them, or they don't want to do the work and they just don't understand it. But the absolute worst possible thing that could happen to you is if you file a self-surrender extension, is it's denied and you go in on your current date. You're not going to get more time. You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to lose privileges. It can't hurt to try it. So again, there's a consultation link in the description of this video. If you want to talk to us about helping you with a self-surrender extension that your attorney can file, or that you can file a pro se in the off chance that your attorney doesn't want to file it, we can definitely help you with that. So the lockdown is just, it's really also a mental issue that many people are going to be dealing with right now. You don't know what programs are going to be starting. You're already worrying enough about how long am I going to be in there. You're earning your FSA credits. We've seen FSA credits being calculated slower than normal because of the lockdown. Again, that's because of understaff. You got staff picking up the slack in all other areas. But the BOP is definitely running. You don't want to go in there and spend a moment longer than you should. And the only people that we see spending time in prison longer than they should are ones that either A, get in trouble, or they don't properly prepare. Working on your release plan right now, like what you're going to do when you get out, how you're going to get to a federal halfway house, what your job is going to be, and looking at the logistics of what that means so you don't get the rug ripped out from underneath of you. Many of you are like self-employed, you're going to go start a business, and you're probably not going to be able to do that in the federal halfway house. They probably won't let you do that in the federal halfway house. You may have no issues doing that once you get to probation, but God forbid you get approved for 6 months, 8 months, 11 months, a year of halfway house. And you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go back to my own job, maybe I work from home. Maybe I work for a friend. And you go talk to your case manager in the halfway house and they're like, nope, you can't do that. You got to work an hourly job. We take a percentage of your income. These are a lot of the things that people don't properly prepare for because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. You're kind of going through this blind, and it's like every step you take, a little light switch comes on and you can see like 5 feet in front of you. You don't just want to see 5 feet in front of you. You really need to have a better scope of what your end game is, what you're preparing for. That doesn't mean every single thing that you're going to try to do is going to work out to your benefit. But I can tell you, those who properly prepare and do their due diligence and who work with others, one of our biggest roadblocks in human nature, especially as men, is I don't need anybody else's help to solve my own problems. And there might be some situations where maybe you don't need anybody else's help. But in a process like this, where the average criminal defense attorney is focusing on primarily on like your plea deal, your sentencing, your sentencing memo, that's kind of where they stop, as many of you already know. You're like, hey, I paid my attorney 6 figures. I pled guilty. And now when I have questions, it almost seems like I'm bothering him. Or you call your attorney with questions and you get off the phone with more questions than answers. This is where a consultant can come in. If you're hiring the right type of a consultant and you do your homework, shop around consultants. I'm not saying, go hire Dan, but there is a consulting link in here. We do a free 15-minute consultation to kind of pegboard where you're at in the system. Maybe you're a good client for us. Maybe you're not. Maybe you got sentenced yesterday. Maybe there's nothing in your PSR. We just got an email from a client that's getting transferred right now to Pennsylvania, to Lewisburg, to the camp in Lewisburg, who did not have all of the documentation needed in their pre-sentence report for the residential drug abuse program. This happens during your pre-sentence investigation. When you sit down with U.S. probation, they're going to ask you all kinds of questions, your mental health, financial information. They're going to go through your substance abuse. And this is where many of you kind of make mistakes. You either drop the ball, you don't disclose your substance abuse, or you minimize your substance abuse because you think it's going to cause you more problems, or you're embarrassed, you're ashamed. And next thing you know, you find out you might not qualify for RDAP now. This happens a lot where we get clients that are calling us that are like, hey, I should qualify for RDAP because I do have a substance abuse problem, or I do have an alcohol problem, but I did not properly disclose it. It's not in my PSR. What can I do? We work closely with a few different chemical dependency professionals, and we have a few that we can get these things done same day in some cases where hey, I'm getting ready to go. I just found this out. What can I do? We can have you on the phone tomorrow, filling out a substance abuse evaluation, meeting with the chemical dependency professional, getting a report. Then that report is sent off directly from the chemical dependency professional, sent off directly to the prison. And if you're at a prison that has RDAP, it's going to be sent to the RDAP coordinator. If you're at a prison that doesn't have RDAP, you can still qualify for RDAP. You can still go and do the interview process. But instead of doing it with an RDAP coordinator, you do it with a prison psychologist. If they deem you qualify for RDAP, then they'd put you in for a transfer and move you out to a prison that does have it. But if you go in there and you don't have the substantial information that should be in your PSR, because that's what they're going to look at first. They're going to go right to your PSR. They're going to go right to the substance abuse area. And if it's not clear as day in there that you had a substance abuse problem within a specific time frame, they're going to say, sorry, you don't qualify. However, if you do get a substance abuse evaluation that can offset the information that wasn't listed at the time of the pre-sentence interview, this can increase your chances from 0 to at least 50 or better. Like I said, if any of you would like to see proof, we have a client that just emailed us from Core Links that just got approved for the program, is being transferred to Lewisburg. I think he's already there now. He would not have gotten into the program if it was not for working with our team. So yeah, we take great pride in things like that. Not everything is a victory. But I can tell you, for those of you that are early in your phase, nobody wants to go to prison. I get it. Nobody wants to go to prison a moment longer than what they need to go either. And one of the worst things you can do is get sentenced, think you did the things you're supposed to, because you're reading some bullshit blog, or you're on TikTok listening to the wrong people. You get to prison, you find out there's all these things that you either didn't do or you did wrong, and you're serving extra time because of it. It makes you want to bang your head really hard against the wall, because now you're like, shit, I might be serving a longer sentence than I need to due to lack of preparation, versus somebody that did all their homework, covered all of their, crossed all their T's, dotted their I's, did everything that they could potentially do to get the best sentence possible. No matter what your sentence is at that point, when you're sitting in prison, you're not going to wonder what you could have done different. You're going to be a little bit more at peace. There's going to be a little bit more calm in your life. You're probably going to get through your prison sentence easier, because you're not falling back on this resentment going, fuck, I should have did things a little bit differently. And that's probably what got a lot of us in prison to begin with, is, taking shortcuts, not paying attention, trusting others to do certain things that maybe weren't being done. So that's really where this video is going. This video is to prompt you to be a little bit edgy and a little bit nervous about, am I doing enough to create the best possible outcome? Am I doing enough to create the best possible outcome in a time of chaos right now with political madness? You've got shutdowns. Who knows when if the shutdown is going to happen again? Instead of focusing on these pie in the sky, these pardons and these clemencies, which are great, I'm not saying don't do it, but very few people get qualified for those. We saw a lot of compassionate releases. So a lot of people were like, oh, compassionate releases are huge. That was during COVID, before there was a vaccine. You had people with comorbidities. They had high blood pressure. They were way overweight. It was dangerous for them to be in these locked in spaces. You were seeing more compassionate releases. Those days are long gone through the CARES Act. That's over and done. So now the problem is, a lot of people still come out of the woodwork, and they're still harping on a lot of that stuff, because it's we're going to get you compassionate release. What? You and your husband have kids at home? Well, you should be home too with them. We're going to make sure the judge knows that. Most of your reasons, most of you that are trying to do compassionate release, most of the reasons that you think you should get compassionate release probably were already mentioned in your pre-sentence report. Your attorney probably mentioned that sentencing. And in order for you to get compassionate release, I can tell you the judges, or the prison's going to deny it. Prior to the First Step Act, the only way somebody could get compassionate release was filing it in the BOP, and they were always denied. Part of the First Step Act was enacted that now you can take a compassionate release and bring it back to sentencing court after you exhaust your BOP remedy, which means you've got to try to get your compassionate release to the prison first. If the prison denies you or doesn't respond within 30 days, you can then take it to a court where it does improve your chances. But if you're going back to court for compassionate release, and the reasons you're listing to the judge are the same reasons that you already had in your sentencing memo, those are already the reasons your attorney was asking for a downward departure in sentencing. Those are probably already the reasons why the judge gave you the sentence you got. They're not going to go unturn that and now give you compassionate release on top of it. It's not happening. But people will take your money for it. Instead, if you're not in prison yet, focus on the mitigating factors and what you can do to receive the shortest sentence up front, and then what you're doing to position yourself for what programs you can qualify for after the fact that can now reduce your sentence even further, whether it's through FSA, Second Chance Act, residential drug abuse program, maximizing your halfway house, your home confinement through congressional recommendations. There's a lot you can be doing, and you just might not know. So get yourself a roadmap started, kind of start doing your homework, stop watching Netflix, stop burying your head in the clouds and awfulizing on how unfair this is and thinking to yourself, this is just bullshit. I can't believe this is happening. It's happening. It's time to get over it. It's time to march on. It's time to pick your head up, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and start taking some accountability and what you can be doing right now to better position yourself to get back to your family as soon as possible. For those of you that are getting ready to self-surrender, we do have a self-surrender checklist. It's on our website. If you want to take a look at that, we'll pull it up right here. So if you go over to our website, federalprisontime.com, there's also a link to this in the description of the video. So federalprisontime.com, you'll see at the very top, self-surrender checklist. Click on that. we really put some effort into this checklist to make it easier for you guys. Wait, let me blow it up a little bit. So you can actually go in and start filling this. And you'll see right here, it says print or reset. So once you're done filling all this stuff in, you can actually print it. And now you'll have your self-surrender checklist on paper as well. Nothing that you click on here, any of these check boxes that you click, none of this stuff saves, meaning we don't get any of this information. So if like you put in your, whatever your name is, all that information, you're the only one that's going to see it. There's no mailing list you have to sign up for. This is not some like trick to get your email so we can spam you to death. This is truly one of the few free things you'll get in life is a self-surrender checklist that can help you kind of double check what you're doing before you go to prison. And at the very bottom of the checklist, there is a spot where if you would like to book a consultation, you can book a discovery call. It's a free 15-minute call. You get to speak to yours truly, Dan Wise, and we can talk about your situation, and maybe it goes somewhere from there, or maybe you get some free gold nuggets and you take it on your own. But preparing properly is probably the best thing that you can be doing, guys. That's really all I got. The government shutdown definitely has caused many problems. It's going to continue to cause problems. And if the government does open back up, that's great. But there is going to be a ripple effect. So if you want to find out how it could affect you and what district you're in, or what prison you're going to, or what questions you should be asking your attorney, book a free consultation. It's that simple. It can't hurt. It's 15 minutes, and we part as friends. That's all I got for you guys. I'm Dan Wise, Federal Prison Time Consulting, people helping people, communities method, one day at a time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.